Everyone, CBC Politics is tweeting this warning. Watch what you tweet. New election laws chill speech, says critic. And this is November 3rd. So this is after the election that just happened. Okay? Yeah, posted 3 hours ago. Good. Watch what you tweet, says CBC. Though few Canadians seem to be aware of this, the recent federal election campaign was fought under a new law that imposes severe penalties for publishing misleading statements on the internet during the writ period. The new amended Section 91 of the Canadian Elections Act, which came into effect on September 11th, threatens prison terms of up to 5 years and fines of up to $50,000 for disseminating false information about a candidate, a prospective candidate, the leader of a political party, or a public figure associated with a political party. So if you talk about them at all, you're subjecting yourself to potentially 5 years in jail and $50,000 fines. Wow. Through an earlier version of the law required that the person charged be aware that the statement is false, the final version removed the word knowingly and allows a charge to be laid even in a case of someone sharing a statement that they believe to be true. Even a cursory search of Twitter quickly turns up countless examples of Canadians who have posted statements that appear to violate the law. Moreover, one of Canada's most mainstream political advocacy groups says it's pulled back some of its messaging it normally sends out every election cycle out of a fear of potential punishment, a response to a real problem. Section 91 is the main plank of the government's effort to prevent disinformation campaigns from distorting the Canadian political process the way Russian troll farms targeted the U.S. presidential election in 2016. Well, I'll tell you, having a group that you can purchase a smear campaign that definitely won't get back to you, that you can definitely say, we don't talk about contracts we engage in, and then that answers the question somehow. You can publicly libel somebody, and libel is just slandering them in print, right? That's all libel is. And people can accept money for this, so long as they believe that the libel is somewhat accurate, right? So that's pretty crazy. If we could verify that they're racist, then we'll definitely smear them as racist. Unbelievable, right? So it is a very interesting thing when they're trotting out 2016 Russian trolls as an example of foreign interference when the CBC, the CTV, Global News, and all the rest publicly smeared Bernier and the People's Party as racists, etc., with zero proof other than Warren Kinsilla's Daisy Group. And they were paid by the Conservative Party, it seems. Isn't that interesting? They're worried about Russians, though. Those Russians have a whole lot of power, except that the political parties that pay well-connected political organizations to smear their rivals, that's a whole lot more concerning to me. Really. Back to the article. The law applies to both foreign and domestic actors, though critics have argued it would be difficult to enforce against groups or individuals outside of Canada. You think? John Barron, a lawyer and executive director of the Canadian Constitution Foundation, has launched a constitutional challenge of Section 91, arguing that it's an unreasonable restriction of free speech. Barron said her group agrees with the aim of defeating efforts to sabotage the democratic process. Quote, that's a goal we share, but we think that this is an ineffective and overly draconian attempt to address it, she said. Malevolent actors from Russia and China will not be deterred by Canadian domestic law. This law has already effectively chilled legitimate political speech, she said. Excuse me, I scroll down. A cannon to kill a fly. Aaron Werdick is the National Director of the Taxpayers Federation, a mainstream advocacy group that is supported by about 20,000 donors. Werdick said that while in the past he might have reposted news stories online during an election campaign, he's reluctant to do so now because he might later turn out to contain errors that run afoul of the law. Quote, it's just deeply concerning that just in doing my job, reporting facts that I heard in the news, that I could be breaking the law, he said. We're a very loud advocacy group. We have strong opinions. We've had to be extra careful. I double and triple check. Some people might say that's a good thing, but it's a free speech issue. I understand we want to weed out lies, but if the price to do that is to chill free speech to the point where people don't think they can speak openly, I think that's a problem. You know what's interesting? So if Daisy Group is posting and publishing all of these lies, and we know that they were paid for lies, doesn't this law come into play? Doesn't this Section 91 come into play? These groups, these journalists, these newspapers willingly published what turned out to be paid for lies. Shouldn't this apply? Really? $50,000 fines and 5 years in prison for the authors and or editors of those newspapers? Do you think that we'll see anything like that happen? I wonder if this will get used at all. But it does apply, in my opinion. And I'm not a lawyer, but if you look at this, on its face, it seems that these newspapers went with lies about a political party leader. Pretty straightforward. Slam dunk case, if you ask me. Moving on, the Toronto Sun is reporting amateur hour, federal conservatives imploding. Now, okay, I've got some things to say about all of this stuff. I think I don't like Andrew Scheer as a leader. I think he's weak. I think he needs to denounce globalists and globalism. I think he's akin to Theresa May in the United Kingdom, would say that she would get the job done, but not actually get the job done. And I'm talking, of course, of Brexit. But I think that Andrew Scheer falls into that category firmly. And I think that he's willing to do what the party tells him to do. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. As far as Canadian politics goes, I think you should be your own man. I much prefer the Donald Trump version of the Republicans versus the George Bush or any other Republican presidents that I was aware of as an adult. And I didn't experience anybody before really 1990 because I was too young to really understand what was going on. But of my adult life, it's interesting looking at Republican presidents. Trump is his own man. Obviously, he's his own man, right? And the rest of them kind of did what the Republican president was expected to do. And I don't know if that's by virtue of them aligning that way with their ideals, or if it's because they did what they were told. But one way or the other, they did what they were told. They did what was expected, and Trump breaks that mold. And so Andrew Scheer doesn't, and he does what he's told. So is he just a party line politician who got leadership, or is he something different? I don't know. So these articles, the articles that they're pointing to, Peter MacKay has denounced them. And still, though, this is a story, right? This is them trying to make this story into something worthwhile. So I'm going to cover it. Here we go. So as it turns out, it was the Conservatives, not the Liberals, who weren't as advertised in the federal election. In the days leading up to October 21st vote, the Conservatives told us that they were united behind Conservative leader Andrew Scheer, who was ready to lead the country. Yeah, except for that whole, giant split in the party where the guy who almost won leadership and had 49% support left the party. And yeah, but we're a united Conservative group, guys. Don't pay attention to that Bernier guy, and don't pay attention to that whole vote splitting thing. And united Conservatives, ready to lead, right? See what I mean about not touching your eyes? Okay, back to the article. But in the days following the election, they've been stabbing each other in the front, with many disingenuously complaining in so many words that they're shocked to discover Scheer is an unelectable social conservative. The Conservatives knew Scheer was a social conservative when they elected him on March 2017, that he personally opposed same-sex marriage and abortion, and that he wouldn't march in gay pride parades. But it didn't matter to party insiders then, because in 2017, they were basically conceding to the 2019 election to Prime Minister. They were basically conceding the 2019 election to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And that's true. Back in 2017, I was just realizing what was going on with Trudeau, but he was still very popular, still bulletproof in the press, and most people were, when he was elected, and right up past India, probably into Gropegate. And then when SNC broke, all bets were off. But up into Gropegate and through Gropegate, most people still supported Trudeau. And most political people watching thought strong majority for 2019. And me included in 2017. If you were to ask me then, definitely I wouldn't have thought any different. And not because I liked it, but because, there's no scandal at that point that would take him down. And the popularity of him would carry him through. And that remained true. We're a post-minority now, right? And he's in a minority government. By all rights, he shouldn't be governing, but he is. So anyway, interesting, right? Back to the article. Their thinking was Trudeau would win a second majority and that the Conservatives would then regroup, replacing Scheer, with whom they considered a caretaker leader, with a higher profile Conservative who would then have a good chance to dethrone Trudeau in 2023. Peter MacKay? Is that what's going on here? Maybe. But that was before scandals like Gropegate, before two ethics commissioners found Trudeau repeatedly broke conflict of interest rules in the Aga Khan and Love scam affairs, before the failed persecution of Vice Admiral Mark Norman, and of course, blackface. With each new scandal, Conservatives' hopes of defeating Trudeau's inaugural majority government after one election, accomplished only twice before in Canadian history, soared. Too many Conservatives foolishly believed all they had to do was show up for the 2019 election and they'd win. This was Doug Ford's strategy as well, and it worked for him. It did not work federally, and they tried this as well against Trudeau. They didn't show up for as many debates, and some Conservative candidates locally, not my locally, my local, and other candidates were chafing under the constraints of party politics, right? At times, right? Just because of, rules around debates, etc. And especially MPPs in Ontario, they didn't do anything. The Conservative candidates were not MIA, because talking to constituents isn't MIA, but they weren't at public events. Back to the article. That's why the result, the Liberals reduced to a minority government with the Conservatives gaining seats and winning popular vote, an outcome Conservatives would have been turning cartwheels over when they elected Scheer in 2017, is now described by Conservative elites as a defeat. I scroll down a little bit. A Conservative party that was ready to govern would have understood that Scheer, having significantly improved the party's electoral standing, should be given a chance to demonstrate he can learn from the weakness he displayed in this election. Like I said, he just needs to renounce globalism and maybe we'll have a soup. Primarily, his inability to convince Canadians that he understands his personal views as a social conservative on abortion and same-sex marriage are irrelevant to the job of being Prime Minister and protecting the rights of all Canadians. Now, I had a quick look at what Sikh people think of gay rights, gay marriage, and abortion. And I don't know Jagmeet Singh's personal opinions on either thing. I don't have any interviews with him. I don't know him personally. I couldn't ask him. But on abortion and on gay sex, gay marriage, circa 2005, Sikh religion had some very strong feelings on it. So it's interesting that Mr. Scheer's religion has a lot to do with it, and maybe the difference is he's stated positions on these things, and Mr. Singh hasn't stated these positions. I'm just going by what their respective religions say about these things. But possibly the difference is Scheer's come out in support of or against these certain things personally, but he says it's not going to affect his politics. So, I mean, it's just something to note to me. I just find it interesting. Anyway, back to the article. If Scheer fails to convince his party that he can do that, then the Conservatives, following their normal procedure, can dump him during a leadership review 6 months from now, though through a non-confidence vote, and hold a new leadership campaign. But the unseemly spectacle of Conservatives now pretending they had no idea who Scheer was when they elected him in 2017 is not only intellectually dishonest, it exposes their party as a nest of vipers lusting for a messiah. Peter MacKay? Seriously? Who can return them to power? They might as well be Liberals. Yeah. Yep. And, well, I've got my next video, which is coming up right after this one, talks about Trudeau going surfing in Tofino while after winning an election, but not really winning the election. I mean, he won a minority, but not as, I mean, do you go on vacation right after doing that? And while you have Canadian companies leaving Canada because you won re-election? Like, is that the right move? He's been really quiet on Twitter, etc. I don't know. I guess surfing is better than governing the country when you're Trudeau. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. We'd love for you to join the conversation and have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday.